Let's start by talking about how multi-domain operations changes the thinking around warfighting. What really does it mean for today's military? And Matt, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest change in our thinking about warfighting is a shift from maybe the 20 plus years of counterinsurgency that we were doing. We're shifting our focus on the peer threats, China and Russia. And I think from the Army's perspective, from a tactical and operational level perspective, we are fighting against, what happens when you have to fight against an evenly matched opponent. And there was a lot of emphasis previously in doctrine about this simultaneous attacks, achieving simultaneity and how you do that. And we were able to build up our combat power on the borders of our enemies and kind of develop domain superiority and kind of do these very decisive attacks against our opponents. And now that's not really possible. So kind of the approach is, and we have to understand, is that small advantages can have a big impact against a peer adversary, especially as you accrue those advantages over time or you build and expand them over time. And so that's what we kind of view multi-domain operations as, is just kind of a shift in thinking that you can't just defeat your peer threat adversaries in one decisive operation. So you have to defeat them in detail. You have to do things over time. You have to look at all of your available advantages and kind of put them together in complementary and reinforcing ways.
In Ukraine, the way that I've it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but have described it as what you're seeing is a military technological revolution with Ukrainian characteristics, or an RMA with Ukrainian characteristics. So from what you see in press reporting, it's very clear that the Ukrainians are very good at combining different effects at the tactical edge. Their ability to combine those at higher echelons, I think, is a little more suspect. And I think that also goes back to Matt's point about the importance of corps or division or higher headquarters at driving integrated effects generation at higher echelons as being really important. But what we do see, especially from the proliferation of things like small unmanned aerial systems, that has provided them with some real benefits. And you've seen things like, the Ukrainians have talked openly about how important things like Starlink are and that their ability to command and control. So you're seeing it's probably not the way the US would do it. It's not across all 5 domains simultaneously. It's very much a bootstrapped approach, but it's effective. So I think in a lot of ways we can glean things about the importance of tactical flexibility, about agility, and about the unique combinations of capabilities that produce asymmetric effects from the Ukraine example. One of the problems, of course, with Ukraine is that when we think about, for the US, probably the pacing challenge in the Indo-Pacific, some of those insights are going to be relevant, others aren't. So it's important always to not over-index on what we learned from Ukraine, take the right lessons away, and then move forward to a broader set of challenges for the US.
Andrew, I'll go back to you it looks like we have a follow-up from one of our viewers on something we discussed earlier. She asked, why are communications going to be degraded over the next 5 to 7 years?
I think that communications are going to be degraded because the ability to fight in a networked integrated fashion has been identified by our adversaries as one of the key advantages the US military has. The ability to deliver fires on demand and large volumes of those in an integrated fashion enabled the US to roll up what was then a relatively advanced air defense system in the Gulf War. So if you take that as a jumping off point, and if you are China or Russia, you look at the way the US fights, you identify that as a advantage, and you work very hard to disrupt it. And we have people on our side working very hard to maintain it. But when your adversary is as focused and as capable as the PRC appears to be, you should not take it as a given that you will have the same degree of comms freedom that you had when that domain was not contested. I'll leave it there.
Matt, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, just the enemy's jamming capabilities and use of electromagnetic warfare is, is at best going to give us, kind of intermittent communications. And a lot of our discussions here at Fort Leavenworth are about, how do you fight kind of while isolated from a communication standpoint from your higher headquarters. So it's just kind of it's an assumption we made, and based on the enemy's capabilities. And if we get involved in something and we have great communications, then great. But if not, we're prepared for it.
You can see that and all the other panels on c4isrnet.com/video.